Hello everyone. So I hope you are all doing well. So let's do one more round of satsang. Ya kundendu tushar har dhavala, ya shubhra vastravrita, ya veena vardand mandit kara, ya svet padmasana, या ब्रह्माच्युत शंकर प्रभृतिभिः देवै सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा. So, all right. So today we'll talk about something really interesting. Now, mostly we'll talk about how to differentiate between a dream and a spiritual vision, and different kind of dreams. Little bit, the real spiritual science behind our dreams, and then we'll talk a little bit about the sentient virtual reality, what's happening, and how we can understand where we are going. All right, so let me just tell you what happened last year around this time in September. So I was talking to a friend who used to live and work in Manhattan, New York, many years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago. And he used to live in an apartment right on the Hudson River. And then for some reason, he had to move out of New York to go to some other city. So now he doesn't live in New York. But he definitely misses being in New York, because he really enjoyed his stay there. So last year I was talking to him on phone, and he was telling me this vivid dream that he had just I guess the night before or a few days before, where he woke up from his dream almost crying, like his whole eyes were full of water and heavily breathing. And in the dream, he was standing on that window facing the Hudson River, and still in his apartment in which he was staying about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And then he woke up from the dream with that intense physiological activities, like almost crying, heavily breathing. And he was telling me this with a tinge of regret that, that he had to leave New York and to go to some other city. And I told him that, my friend, you never left New York. You are still in New York. You never left New York. You don't have to be sad. You don't have to regret your decision. You never left New York. You are still in New York. And then I had to explain to him what it means. See, what it means is, last year around this time was that 15 days of Pitripaksh, the fortnight of ancestors in our Vedic tradition. And during those days, during those 15 days, we get all kind of dreams, vision, and it's very interesting. And what I meant when I told him that you never left New York was that, look, this is, as Sri Ramakrishna has told us clearly, that we are living in this virtual reality which is very sentient, playing out in another world. And here time passes at a much faster rate compared to there. So while my friend here in this world left New York, but there where this is playing out, he's still there. He's still in New York. He's still there in his apartment. And what happens during this 15 days of Pitarpaksh, this fortnight of the ancestor, the data rate is very high. That means the rate of communication, and the channels open up for transmigration from this world to that world. And sometime, we, by we I mean our soul or my soul or his soul, moves back to the player. By player I mean the player behind the NPC. NPC, like non-playable character. All of us are NPCs here in this world. And then when he woke up, so when he came back here to this, NPC avatar, um, you know, he thinks that it's a dream, but it's not a dream. He was actually back to where he actually resides. But when he comes back here, this world. It's such a not audio realistic, not video realistic. It's such a life realistic game that he thinks that his life is not as good as it could be. He had to leave New York, and he feels that tinge of sorrow. So when I explained all this to him, he felt good. He felt better. But then you would ask, why all those physiological activities like almost crying, high breathing? So what happens is, look, I'm going to talk more about it later in this talk. But when everyone cannot leave this body to go back, because as soon as we leave the body, there are forces inside our subtle body which all immediately tries to close the entry doors or just take over the system. So there are certain conditions have to be there in order for someone to leave this body, even for a small while. And when he came back, those conditions started to become normal, and they manifest as this, sometimes crying, sweating, or very high level of breathing. This is almost like what you see in symptoms of Vaishnavas in Vaishnava tradition of a highly spiritual being. So I thought that was a really interesting event. But anyhow, I'll tell you, there are 3 to 4 different types of dreams. One type of dream is what we talked about, where we literally, for a while, get out of this game and go back to that world where we are a player. And sometimes it manifests as that situation where you feel almost intense experience similar to this life, but very, very I would say realistic experience. Second thing that one can notice is you have different scale. So for example, a tree here, you know how tall the trees are, maybe 20, 30 feet. But sometimes if you see a tree where a tree looks 100 feet tall, then you should know that you are not just watching a dream, you are in a different world. So I was talking to a child, I think a few years ago, and she was telling me around the same fortnight that she was in this dream where she was playing with a turtle, and turtle was so huge. Turtle was like as huge as a car, here. And she was with a different set of parents. And I didn't say, I just smiled because, she went back for a while where she really truly is. And sometime, who are our parents here may not be our parents there, because parents here may be just a normal NPC, or maybe family members who say, okay, you become my children there in that video game for one life. It's amazing. So when that happens, you typically have different scale, much bigger, much larger, sometimes much nicer. And second, those dreams will coincide with tremendous physiological event, like high breathing, sweating, crying. It's mostly just our subtle body coming back to normal, that's all. That's one kind of dream. Second kind of dream is, which is spiritual vision. So in spiritual vision, what happens is, we can't create spiritual vision for ourselves, by ourselves. a spiritual vision is always communicated to us. It's like someone sending us a message or a voicemail. And we know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So typically what happens is, when we are watching a dream, then let's say a small clip, 1 or 2 seconds, is inserted during that dream, or sometimes it's just given as a very, just one small clip. But there are two factors about it that you can't forget it. One, it's so clear, it's more clear than this world. You can't forget it. Like normally the dream we forget, but that vision that is communicated to us, we can't forget. It's so clear, it's so deeply imprinted in our mind. And second, it has a lot of meaning, and most of the time the meaning would be something that we are wrestling with, in our mind. Or let's say if we are praying about something, we are trying to figure out the question, we are uncertain, then sometime, encouragement is given. So while that vision may be meaningless to most people, but because we have been wrestling with some ideas in our own mind, it becomes obvious to us that, oh, this is the answer. Oh, this is being told to us. This is the answer. Someone is communicating to us. So, for example, in the Gospel, Sri Ramakrishna always talks about that in your spiritual life, early on, it's like a small planted tree. You have to fence it so that cows and goats, they don't just graze on it and kill the plant. But when it becomes a really large mature tree, then you don't have to protect it. Then you can, even an elephant cannot damage that. So the problem is, how do you know? Like when someone is doing a spiritual practice and making some progress, but then how would someone know that, okay, now or my spiritual life is mature enough, strong enough that I don't have to protect and fence it so much? It's a question because there is no clear-cut answer to it. So in this case, let's say you can get a vision of a beautiful tree which is so clear to you that, like a tree that you have never seen before, and you will see someone is trying to, just push on the tree, trying to just pull it off, but it cannot. That means they're trying to communicate with you that this tree is deeply rooted, is very strong. That means you get an answer that, okay, you are fine, you are getting there. See, this is how spiritual vision works. When you get those visions, you don't have to ask anyone because because you have been wrestling with those questions in your own mind, and then you get the answer. So that was the second kind of dream. One was when we go to another world. Second, we get spiritual vision when something, some information, some teaching, some clarification, some encouragement is communicated to us by someone, mostly, Narayana in some form, either Krishna, Chaitanya, Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna, Masharada, all they can communicate with us. And the third kind of dream is, which is normal dream that we go through when we sleep. And these are most unproductive, kind of useless dream that we should try to avoid. So even in this third category of dream, there are two subcategories. One is, when we sleep, who is sleeping? Who is sleeping is our buddhi and our man, is sleeping. The Atma is ever awake. Atma never sleeps. But what happens, when we sleep, man starts to move through different centers. And I've talked about the design of man. So as man moves through different centers, it repeats, whatever is stored there. It could be mostly our past event, not only from this life, from previous lives. And that's a total useless dream. It's just not getting a peaceful sleep. And second kind of dream is, which is very dangerous actually for us, harmful, which is mostly happens, you will see early in the morning, or especially when people sleep in. And what happens in that case, these dreams feel like they are very vivid dreams. They have some storyline to it, and they keep going on and on and on. And then even if you try to get up, and then if you don't just leave the bed, after 5 seconds the storyline starts into a new movie, and it goes on and on, like for hours. And especially kids, young people, they really think that they're having a good dream, and they try to really enjoy that dream. It's like watching a movie in your head. But what's happening is, see, what I talked about in my earlier video, mm, that, about 3 hours before sunrise, during that Amrit Muhurt, we get the source, daily dose of that Amrit, that Bindu. And that is most, that is like the fuel which fuels all our, uh, you can call it awareness throughout the day. It's called Amrit, Ambrosia, Bindu, Ojas. And there are forces within our body who are basically fooling us. What they are doing is, they are fooling us by showing those stories, that movies, playing those movies, and literally, they are stealing, they're using that Amrit to take over our body. That's the most dangerous thing. That's the most dangerous thing that can happen to us. One, they steal our that nectar, that Amrit, and second, they take over our body. They make us old. They make us sick over time. So, moral of the story is, just don't sleep too much. And second, especially in the morning, don't sleep in. And especially if you feel like you're having a great vivid dream, that is actually you're being robbed. You're you're being pickpocketed right there in front of you. Other thing about those spiritual visions are, they typically happen early in the morning, like very early morning dreams, because again, there is a fresh supply of that Amrit, that Bindu, that nectar, this small bug which is flying in front of my eyes. Or, let's say if you're taking a nap during day, or during, let's say somehow you fell asleep in the evening time before around sunset. So whenever you have those sandhi kal, so morning, evening, like sunrise, sunset, midday and midnight, again there the data transfer rate is very high. So that's when, but most likely early in the morning, after that Amrit Kal, between, let's say, an hour to 2 hour, 2.5 hour before sunrise. That's when those clear, extremely clear. It's hard to even explain how clear those visions are. That's when those visions are given to us. We can't have by our own choice. They are communicated to us. So, three types of dreams. One is when we really go to another world, and you can see it through just different scale. Things look at a different scale. Second, intense physiological event when you wake up. Second is spiritual visions that I talked about. Third is very useless kind of a dream, normal dream. And second, which is more like a vivid dreams, but we are being robbed. So this is something that I wanted to talk about. As a spiritual aspirant and spiritual practitioner, we should try to minimize our sleep, and especially, early in the morning. And it's not only for spiritual success, even in the material world. To succeed in the material world, we should get up early in the morning. That will give us, energy, clarity of mind, clear thinking for the rest of the day. So I hope it's helpful in some way, or interesting for sure. Yeah. So, and during this Pitarpas, today is the first day of that 15 day. So just keep an eye, if you watch something in the next 14 days. So it leads to the second topic, which is more like, virtual sentient reality that we are in. Who can see those dreams at a different scale? Can all of us see? So all of us cannot see it. So see, all of us here are NPCs in this sentient virtual reality. All of us are the same. We all are like an avatar, in today's metaverse. We are all are NPCs. But some of us, and that number is not very small, that number is quite significant. Some of us have a player behind us in the other world. And that number is not in just few, like when the iPhone came, very few people had iPhone, but over time, many, many people have iPhone. Similarly, that number could be quite meaningful. But all of them are not spiritual. All of them don't have a spiritual interest. Um, you would say why? Why? And it's that information is given to us by Sri Ramakrishna, right? Like he says in the gospel that all of us who are here, even Ishwar Kotis, they are not. Ishwar Kotis literally means the controller, the one who has a player behind in the another world. But all of them don't come here because they are spiritual. Sri Ramakrishna says that there are others who come here to do karma. Karma karne aate hain. That means they want to work here. That means they just want to do the same worldly activity that do there. I mean, they want to build rocket to Mars. See, so you can see it playing out exactly here, right? I mean, on YouTube you see there are I don't know, millions of channels, but you can see if there is a just song, normal song from Bollywood or from here in the US, you will have billions of views. But if you have a spiritual talk by a great sadhu, you will have maybe tens of thousands of views. So you will say, oh, it's the same YouTube, same internet, but why everyone is not interested, in a spiritual facts, spiritual matters? Because they are not interested, That's not their sanskar, they are not there yet. Similarly, where this VR is playing out, everyone is not interested in coming to this world and being enlightened. Everyone is not. Most of them are interested in building rockets, building computer companies, starting a cooking channel on YouTube, that kind of thing, or just going to different places, because it's such a life realistic game. People can do here things that they cannot do in their real life there. See, and it's all given. See, all this secret is given to us by Sri Ramakrishna. That's why I tell you, Sri Ramakrishna is the coolest thing that has happened to this world in last 200 years. After Sri Chaitanya, who was no other than Krishna himself, Krishna came again as Sri Ramakrishna to be the coolest thing. And somehow, this cool message, was somehow just got misplaced. But we are going to place it back at the right place. See, on 21st March of 1886, he's just sitting in the room. He's very sick. He has cancer, right, in this avatar body. And he's sitting with probably 10 of his closest disciples. And you look at that conversation, they all know, not only Sri Ramakrishna, they all know that they all come here from other place. And the way they are talking to each other, they are just enjoying themselves as if, a soccer team goes to another city and they are just enjoying that, okay, look, we are in a different city, in a different country. They all know that they are not from here. So you have to look at that conversation. Second point is, you probably remember, Vivekananda at one point is talking to Shardananda, another disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, and he says, hey, it looks like I have been to your house before. It seems very familiar. I don't know, how do I know your house before? See, it's life realistic. As the world is there, immediately above us, same here. But it's even someone like Vivekananda, it's hard to believe. I don't think he believed ever in his life, this fact. If you recall, when Sri Ramakrishna was very sick, he made Vivekananda tell, I think Dr. Sarkar, I don't remember, in one of the conversations, that there is a place between Narloka and Devloka. That means where Devi Devatas live and where Nar, a form of humans, live. There is another place. And the people, he's talking about us. And it's hard to differentiate whether beings living in that place in the middle, if they are same or different from Nar, another loka. So it's the same as, God created man in its own image. It's a life realistic. It's a life realistic. That's why it is such an interesting game, and it is such a difficult game. And how difficult this game is, it's given to us, right, in our scriptures, in our spiritual books, time and time and time again. But in the past, it was very difficult to communicate. How do you explain someone what is virtual reality, what is computer, what is a game? Even giving them this idea that it's possible to create a world like this, it's just impossible. But now, we are not in Kansas anymore, Godpath. We are in a different place. So now it's very easy to directly communicate what the reality is. And then we can take the reference, of our scripture or spiritual books. So I told you, I've been listening to this reading of Bhagavatam by Sri M. And I was very surprised that in his fourth part, he talks about this story of Puranjana. It's a story of King Puranjana. I had never heard of this story before. See, I have read Bhagavatam not completely, in parts, and I think I need to read it back to back, because it seems like it has an amazing amount of real truth. So in that story of Puranjana, it has two things. It actually three things. It's an amazing story. It tells us the design of our subtle body. Second, it tells us that we are living in this sentient virtual reality. And the third is, it gives us real Brahma Vidya, real spiritual knowledge, that how it works. See, it's exactly similar story to that two-bird story, the upper bird and lower bird in the Upanishad. But here it's a lot more detailed and direct how it works. So let me quickly flush out the 3 points. One is, see, why it's such a life realistic sentient virtual reality. Because this King Puranjana, he dies and then he becomes another human being, another being, and he completely forgets his past life, and he's 100% sure that he's the new person, and he has lost all the memory. See, that's life realistic. The second, why it's the true Brahma Vidya, true knowledge of Brahman, education of Brahman, because see, it talks about the same two-bird framework, but here it's very clear that you have a player who doesn't really get involved in that sentient virtual world, who is just watching from outside the game. But there is an avatar, there is a just true life realistic copy of that person inside that virtual world, sentient virtual world, who is exact life realistic copy, but very different. And over time, as the player starts to play that game, the player completely forgets about who the player is and takes that avatar to be real, and that life to be real, and then it goes on from life to life, and forgets completely where and who that person really is, until he somehow goes back to his own self, his own player. That's why for Ishwar Kotis, it's much easier to just get out of the game, because over time he's driven back, he's reminded by the player, but not in every case. So if you see, it looks actually very closer to Sankhya philosophy, where you see, okay, Purusha is the player outside of the game, and Prakriti is literally the whole game. Prakriti is that virtual reality system, sentient virtual reality system. But I think because we don't have, the real Sankhya teaching, so I don't think we should take Sankhya as it is right now. We need modification in Sankhya philosophy. So what Sankhya says is that, okay, Prakriti is insentient and only Purusha is sentient. But that's not the real understanding. I mean, that's the incomplete understanding of Sankhya. For example, see, if we have a very nice VR system where you have almost realistic avatar, all of us are not going to agree that that VR system is sentient. It's not going to happen. Some of us will agree, others will not. So when we see in today's version of Sankhya that Purusha only is sentient and Prakriti is insentient, that is not the real Sankhya. The real Sankhya will be Purusha is sentient too, and that sentient virtual reality is sentient too. But then you will say, okay, now this means Vedanta, non-dual bogus Mandukya Vedanta. It's not. Because non-dual Mandukya Vedanta will say, neither Purusha exists, nor that VR system exists, nothing exists. It's emptiness, it's nothingness. Never really happened. But that's bogus. That's bogus Mandukya Vedanta. We are not in Kansas anymore, Gaurapad. The real teaching is given to us by Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Chaitanya, Sri Ramanuja, and also Sri Shankara. But his teaching has been corrupted over time by this bogus Mandukya Pandits. So we can see, right, that Purusha is obviously sentient and Prakriti is also sentient. But this is not one individual conscious unit. That one consciousness, that Param Brahma, that Narayana, and that Adya Sakti, that Jagdamba, divides itself into innumerable number of smaller units to create this amazing world that we are in. And then takes it back again into one, that one Narayana. But it cannot be explained. That non-dual doesn't mean one, it's beyond one and two. Once that Atman realizes its true nature, it's beyond one and two. So actual truth is what Sri Ramakrishna has said us, what Sri Ramanuja has told us, that Brahman and Shakti are Bhed. It's not false, it's real, it's as real as it gets. And then you will say, okay, then how do you know it's not just one consciousness? Just look at the story of Puranjana. It's an amazing, that story of Puranjana, it's an amazing description of our subtle body. I'll have to do another video on that. I was so happy and so excited to hear the story. That's so clear that you can see in that story, the man is one conscious unit. That five-headed serpent, they are like five indriyas. There are 10 servants with 100 attendants, there are 10 pranas. And then it just shows you that each prana divides into multiple layers. They are like vrittis. They move in circles. An amazing thing is that Chandravada, with 360 servants and their maid servant, 360 maid servant. That is the information that first time I came across. See, that is what I talked about, that vivid dream. This Gandharva, this Chandravaga, I am really mad at that Gandharva. What they do? They show us that those vivid dreams, and they rob the Amrit, rob that life-giving holy water. And I'll have to do another topic on that, but it's another video on that topic. It's so interesting. And what I talked about in my last video about that Amrit that we get, it's out there. See, it's in different yogic tradition, where they deny the existence of that Rama. They become perfect taking the name of Rama, Sri Ram, Sri Krishna, Sri Ram Krishna, that Narayana. But then they try to deny. They say, okay, don't believe in God, don't believe in that Rama, that Narayana, just believe in Sadguru. Well, you can believe in Sadguru, but after all, in the end, they all have to go to that Narayana. There is no escape. So what they do is they try to give some kind of secret knowledge. And then based on that knowledge, they say, okay, now come to me, become my disciple. But it's not going to work. Krishna is amazing. And he comes time and time again, most recently as the coolest Sri Ramakrishna. So you will see there are many songs like ulta kuan laga gagan mein. So there is an upside down well, in the sky. What does that mean? It seems like it's something mystical. It's not. It's what we talked about. We all get daily supply of that ojas, that amrit. There is another song, it's called Pile Amiras Dhara Gagan Mein Jhari Lagi. Pile Amiras Dhara Gagan Mein Jhari Lagi. Amiras means like amrit, So drink that that nectar, that flow of nectar. There is a rain happening in the sky. See, it's all there. But we are going to share this knowledge with everyone. And why do you have jhari? Why do you have rain? Because it ties into those 360 and 360, attendants of that Gandharva, that wicked Gandharva. What is the name? Chant. So we'll talk about that in the next video. So I'll stop here. I'll urge you again and again and again that look, have 100% conviction and 100% faith in our own tradition. Don't buy into something that some new inner engineering, outer engineering is telling you. Anything new that people throw at us, we should not take it at all. But what is given to us, by greats like Sri Ramanuja, Sri Shankara, Sri Chaitanya, Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharda, Tulsidas, Mirabai, we should live with that. Because in our scriptures, in our spiritual books, we have been given the truth, and that is our strength. That should give us confidence. This is our time to rise and shine. The world is coming to us, the Vedic tradition. Today only I was watching this video, this interview between Lex Friedman and Mark Zuckerberg, and they are talking in this new codec avatar of that Meta is doing. And at some point, Lex Friedman is telling Mark that, look, it's hard for me to differentiate between your physical appearance and the digital appearance. The digital looks just as much as physical. See, at some point they will come to us. Our knowledge of the truth, that this whole thing is sentient. There is no such thing as physical. Everything is sentient. Like what Sri Ramakrishna said, why do we worship the Pratima of Jagdamba? Because you think it's made of mud or stone or a gem. No, it's all consciousness. It's all that Chaitanya. It's all made of Chaitanya. That's where the world will come to in the end. And then they will try to destroy our culture and appropriate it. But we are not going to let it happen. That's why we have to have 100% conviction, confidence, and we should rise and shine. And who is there with us? Sri Ramakrishna, most recently. Okay? So I'll stop here. There's a lot more to talk about. I think next I'll talk about that story of Puranjana and talk about that Gandharva, what they do to us, and a little bit more about the design of our subtle body. And we have to wipe this Mandukya Vedanta from the memory of the whole humanity. That's the most dangerous thing to us, Vedic people, and also the whole world. All right? So I'll stop here with this and then we can close it. मेरे प्यारे का नाम श्री कृष्ण, उस ग्वाले का नाम श्री कृष्ण, बंसी वाले का नाम श्री कृष्ण, मेरे प्यारे का नाम श्री कृष्ण. All right, then take care. We'll talk again. All right then. Bye.